this past week, I got a whole bunch of play toys. I did. Like Sherry's work, like we have great health insurance. Like she works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Like right? It's like we've got great insurance. And one of the benefits of this, like this year, I have been inundated with stuff from something called Twin Health. And I'm like, why do y'all want me so bad? Well, turns out it's actually a free resource that's from our health insurance. Because I was diagnosed with diabetes, they're like, hey, we want to give you a smartwatch. We want to give you a little Dexcom meter to measure your heart rate and your sleep and your blood sugar, and we want to measure everything. Going to give you a scale and a blood pressure cuff to be able to manage all of the right tools to manage this stuff. Let me tell you what, I had pizza for the first time since wearing this thing. My blood sugar was at 95 prior to. It shot up to 220. That is what simple stuff, like the non-complex carbohydrates, that's what that stuff does to your blood sugar. Like, I will be eating cauliflower crust from here on out. Thank you very much. and part of me did it just so I could see what it did. Because you poke your finger in the morning, you take your blood sugar, and that's all there is to it, right? Yeah, I had no idea what this stuff was doing to my body, and I'm like, my God, I'm not going to eat anything but a vegetable ever again. Meat and vegetables. Like, my eyes got opened. Like, whoa. Having the right tools is absolutely necessary for the job. And this has enabled me to as good as I was doing before, I'm going to be able to do even better now that I've got some of these tools on my belt, because I'm going to be able to know what my blood sugar is doing when I eat certain foods, and I'm going to know what to stay away from, because everybody's different. It's like no two diabetics are alike. Like what affects me may not affect you. I am such a nerd, as if y'all didn't know that already. But I went through and I was looking at some stats this week, and I came across some statistics. Craig's going to pull these up here in a second. Barna is probably one of the biggest research houses, like Christian research houses in the country. And I ran across this study. It says generational differences on faith sharing, like sharing the faith, right? The darker ones in the center are strongly agree. The lighter color on the outside is somewhat agree. The first question is, part of my faith means being a witness about Jesus. 96% of millennials, 97% of Generation X, 95% of boomers, 95% of elders agree with that statement. The best thing that can ever happen to someone is for them to come to know Jesus. Again, 94, 97, 97, 97. We all agree on this stuff for the most part. When someone raises questions about faith, I know how to respond. We drop a little bit more, 86, 90, 92, 89, but still the numbers are not bad. What this means is that we are prepared to share the gospel, right? We're prepared. Watch this. I am gifted at sharing my faith with other people. Watch how that number drops. 73, 66, 59, and 56. It is wrong to share one's personal beliefs with someone of a different faith in hopes that they will one day share the same faith. 47% of millennials, 27% of Gen X, 19% of boomers, and elders is 20. If someone disagrees with you, that it means that they're judging you. 40% of millennials would agree with that statement. Let me tell you what. The stats for Generation Z, that usually they're back teaching kids now, but Hannah and Bree and Heidi and like our Caleb and all the kids up here, like that's Generation Z. That statistic is higher, like way higher. What this tells us is that we are prepared to share the gospel, but we are not willing. Wow. Now, the older the generation gets, the more willing we are. Take that as it's from an older generation. Take that as though we're growing older and we realize our own mortality. I mean, there's a whole number of possibilities that this could lean itself towards. But the fact of the matter is that the younger the generation gets, the less willing they are to share the gospel. Why is that? I mean, it absolutely blows my mind. If we really believe that part of my faith is being a witness about Jesus, and the best thing that could ever happen to someone is for them to come to know Jesus, then why am I not sharing the gospel? Why am I'm prepared to do it. We've got all the right tools, right? We've got all the right tools to do it. But if we're not willing, we have to ask ourselves why. Like a hardcore why. I know we're getting in like real deep, real fast this morning. Buckle up, because here we go. Acts 14. I say this every week. Chapter 14 is great. It's a great chapter. It just keeps getting better and better. We're going to go through the first 7 verses here real quick. Paul and Barnabas, to kind of recap, Paul and Barnabas have been commissioned by the Holy Spirit for work. They have been sent off from Antioch, and they have been going around the countryside. This is actually Paul's first missionary journey. It is a brief one. It is the shortest of the 3. I say brief. It's not short by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the last 2, it's rather short. So they're off here, and we start off here in Iconium. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went, as usual, into the Jewish synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jews and Gentiles believed. But the Jews who refused to believe stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there speaking boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the message of his grace by enabling them to do miraculous signs and wonders. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, others with the apostles. This was a plot afoot among the Gentiles and Jews, together with their leaders, to mistreat them and stone them. But they found out about it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe and to the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the good news. To my younger folks in the room, here's your first blank. The gospel will divide. There's no 2 ways about it. The gospel itself, of its very nature, is divisive. There are people, when you share the gospel, that are really not going to like you because you stand for someone that offends them. Like hardcore offends them. Unbelievers are going to stir up people against Christians. It is the way it is. And here it is. The enemy himself is very deceptive. Notice in chapter 2 that it says that the Gentiles who were stirred up had their mind poisoned against the brothers, Paul and Barnabas. The enemy is extremely deceptive. He is very poisonous. Paul, and at the moment I cannot remember where this at. It's in one of his letters. he says that the enemy comes masquerading as an angel of light. You see, the devil doesn't come at you with guns blazing and in a full fury of an onslaught, I think Revolutionary Civil War kind of stuff, or Revolutionary War, where you have the British on one side and the rebels on the other, and then they get kind of beat in the battlefield. That is not how he comes at us, guys. That is not how he comes. He comes at us with subtle deceptions, questioning, did God really say? He questions what God has said. That's the first thing he questions. His motive is to get you to doubt this. Because if he can get you to doubt this and make a subtle compromise here and another subtle compromise here and another subtle compromise there, he's got you. Because it's going to be one compromise after another, and you're going to, before you even know what's going on, you will find yourself opposed to him. It doesn't take much. And for anybody who's not experienced that, be warned, it's coming. It's coming. You will be tested in this manner at least once. He is going to come at you, and it's going to be slick, man. It's going to look so good. Oh, man, I want this. Don't do it. Don't do it. This, my friends, is why we have to have the armor of God on us. Mind you, that they had their minds poisoned. Mind you, that we need the helmet of salvation. That salvation of Christ protects our minds, guards us in him. We have to have that on. See, they had plots to stone Paul and Barnabas, to mistreat them. So they left Iconium and they went to Lystra and Derbe instead. It says verse 6, but they found out about it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe and the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the good news. Here's my next encouragement. Because the gospel divides, okay? Because the gospel divides, number 2, do not let people denying Jesus get you down. You are going to hear the word no. I have said this 1,000 times in the series in Acts. I have said this 1,000 times. I'm going to continue to say it. People are going to deny Jesus. They are going to say no. Do not get discouraged by that. Because the gospel is divisive. People will deny him. And it is very easy to get frustrated about hearing that no and that denial. But you cannot stop. You cannot stop. People will not accept the gospel. Not everybody will. But some will. We cannot allow the enemy to discourage our efforts because we hear no. We were just talking about it this morning, that we are a generation of people who are very, very soft. Amen. We want to quit at the first sign of adversity. That's the problem with a lot of marriages, is that we have given up at the first sign of adversity. We don't know how to persevere through tough times because we hear nothing but you are good and glorious and you deserve happiness. And I'm like, well, you know what? Life's not like that. Life stinks. And it's going to throw some curveballs at you. And it's going to throw a knuckleball at you. And God forbid the spitball. Like it's going to be ugly. Try to hit one of those pitches. Like, seriously, no. Life is going to throw stuff at you. It is going to be hard. It is going to be tough. We cannot stop at the first sign of adversity when things just start to get tough. Michael Jordan did not become one of the greatest basketball players in history by giving up at the first sign of adversity. Tiger Woods did not become one of the greatest golfers on the face of the planet at the first sign because he gave up at the first sign of adversity. Jesus Christ did not give up at the first sign of adversity. He persevered through it. He persevered through it. Because he persevered, we have to too. Verse 8. In Lystra there sat a man crippled in his feet who was lame from birth and had never walked. He'd never walked. Like ever. That's a statement. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him and he saw that he had faith to be healed and called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bowls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, "Men, why are you doing this? We too are only men, human like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God who made heaven and earth and sea and everything in them. In the past he let all nations go their own way, yet he had not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy. Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. Here's my next point. Healing happens. Healing happens. This man had not walked since birth. He had never walked, ever. It's not like he had walked and then went lame. He had never walked. He listened to Paul. Paul saw that he had faith and told him to get up and walk. Why do we not expect that healing and miracles and signs and wonders, why do we not expect this stuff to happen now? I mean, it's a real question. Because do we think it was for the first century only? Because here's the thing. The same God that rained fire on Sodom and Gomorrah is the same God who brought the 12 plagues upon Egypt. He's the same God that walked the Israelites and Moses through the Red Sea on dry land. He is the same God who rained down manna and quail for Israel. He's the same God that brought water out of a rock. He is the same God that turned water into wine. He is the same God that healed the sick, made the lame walk, the deaf hear, the blind see. He worked all of these miracles through the first century apostles and prophets. Do we just think that it just stopped? Do we think that this stuff just stopped on a dime because God said, yeah, well, whatever, I think we're done? No. The same God who did all of these miracles and all of these signs and wonders is the same God that lives inside of you. He doesn't just stop. This stuff did not just stop at the first century. This stuff still happens today, but we do not expect it to. I'm not saying that, well, you're not healed because you don't have enough faith. No. It had nothing to do with your faith. Like, one guy is like, I do believe, help my unbelief. And Jesus healed him. Like, this is about Jesus. This is about the power of God. And with faith, we don't have to have a full and massive, completely bloomed faith. All it takes is this faith the size of a mustard seed. Mustard seed. Have you seen a mustard seed? Go to the grocery store. Yeah, if you've not seen one, go to the grocery store. They are tiny. Like really, really small. Tiny. And they grow into these massive trees. Like, what? You see, all it takes is faith the size of a mustard seed. It doesn't have to be a full-bloomed, beautiful tree of faith. All it needs is to be a little mustard seed. God did not just stop working miracles at the first century. He does them here and now. And here's the thing. Even if the answer for the prayer and the healing and the miracle and the sign and the wonder, even if that answer is no or not yet, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, before they were thrown into the fire, said, yet still, even if God doesn't rescue us, we still will not bow down to your idol. We will worship and we will serve the God of the universe, regardless, even if he doesn't rescue us. We still choose him, regardless of whether that miracle happens or not. But here's the warning on the heels of that. When the healing, when the miracles, when the signs and the wonders happen, do not let them worship you. Because we see what Paul and Barnabas ran into. They're like, oh my gosh, the gods have come down and they're worshiping, they're here, and Zeus and Hermes, like, no, Paul's like reasoning with them, hey, we're guys just like you, we're nothing special. It says that even after all of these words that they had difficulty stopping the crowd from sacrificing to them. People are going to want to elevate us. I don't know about you, but my ego doesn't need the boost. I mean, just saying. I don't need help trying to elevate myself. Like I do that very well enough on my own. Thank you very much. Is like everything I can do just to, No. We need to continue to praise Jesus, and we need to continue to point people to do the same. This needs to be part of our testimony. What I'm about to say needs to become part of our testimony. Verses 15 to 17 says, men, why are you doing this? We too are only men, human like you. We bring you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made heaven and earth and sea and everything in them. In the past, he let all nations go their own way, yet he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy. Whatever sin we face, it is absolutely worthless. Because you are not that body. Whatever you do in the flesh, that flesh is going to die eventually. One way or another. Whether we make it to the time when Jesus comes back and we are caught up in the air and we meet him in the sky, or whether we die. One way or another, that body is going to die. But you will not die, because you are not your body. You are a soul that has been assigned a body. That is who you are. The real you is not what you physically see in the mirror. Whatever sin you face is absolutely worthless. God is everything. And the fact of the matter is that he let us go our own way. He let us go our own way in order to come and rescue us. He let us do whatever it was that we thought was right. And the fact of the matter is he shows kindness. His grace rains upon us in the form of rain and by bringing crops and seasons. The whole world grows food. They survive on the rain that comes in seasons and harvests. Brings happiness and joy. These are all grace. These are all graces of God. Why would we want anyone or anything else but him? Everything else is worthless. It doesn't matter. I mean, I hate to go like full Ecclesiastes on you, but like nothing, this is all worthless. I mean, it really is. It's like the whole, God is what matters. That is what matters. I want to draw your attention next here. Verse 20. Let me start in 19. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. Paul was stoned. Dragged him outside of the city, stoned him, left him for dead. Watch what he does next. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. He went back into the very city where they had just stoned him and left him for dead. How many of us would be bold enough to go back to a city where they just stoned us and left us for dead? You see, verse 21, he goes on and he says, they preached the good news in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, they said. That's your next blank. Straight out of Scripture. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. I have been looking for this verse for years. I really have. I'm like, I know that with faith comes suffering. And I found verses, and it's like, they kind of somewhat fit. Yeah. Like, that verse jumped off the page at me this week. I'm like, there it is. It's like, that's the verse I've been looking for forever. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. So faith and suffering go hand in hand. If Jesus went through suffering for us on the cross, why in the world do we think that we're going to be exempt from that? Why? Good, we're not. We're not. We're going to go through many hardships. I don't care what that hardship is. It can be health problems. It can be financial problems. It can be family problems. It can be persecution, suffering of any number. of different forms and variations. Sometimes it's multiple parts and multiple different angles. Maybe it's a struggle with a sin. Who knows? But here's the point. The work must go on. The work must go on. We have to press on. We have to persevere. We have to endure. We can't quit at the first sign of adversity. We have to strengthen the disciples. We have to encourage them to remain true to the faith. We have to establish leadership. Verse 23, Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord in whom they had put their trust. After going through Pisidia and came into Pamphylia, and when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. From Attalia they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work they had completed. On arriving there, they gathered the church together and reported all that God had done through them and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. And they stayed there a long time with the disciples. We strengthen evangelism. Evangelism is not where this stops. It doesn't. It can't. Evangelism does not stop here. When we make converts, we strengthen disciples, we encourage them to remain true to the faith, and we establish leaders. I mean, this is why the American church is where we're at, is because we haven't done any of that. We haven't strengthened disciples. We haven't encouraged them to remain true to the faith. We have not established good, quality, biblical leadership. We just haven't. We need to do these things. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does happen. But by and large, most churches in this country do not. It just doesn't happen. Paul and Barnabas went home. They gave a report. It is imperative to report in with those who sent you. And let me tell you why. Because I think I mentioned this last week. Because we don't always get to hear about the fruit that is brought forth because of our efforts. We don't always get to hear that. Report in with those who sent you. Report in with them. Because not only do we report to them that which is good so they can celebrate with us, because they will, but it also encourages them not to quit either. We all need encouragement. And the fact of the matter is that the big idea is extremely, extremely simple this morning. The work must go on. The work has to go on. Next Sunday, we have got an amazing opportunity. The work will go on. We've got an opportunity to go down and serve a very unreached people group. We're not just going to cook for it was mentioned in, I think it was Sunday school this morning, or men's group, one of the two. We're not just going to go cook some burgers and dogs and feed people. We are going to share the gospel. That's the primary reason of going. The vehicle which that happens is feeding them. That's how it is going to happen. But the goal is to share the gospel with them. Because the homeless are outcasts in our society. And when somebody walks in amongst our midst who is homeless, we get nervous. Why? Sometimes for good reasons. Other times for not so good reasons. They need the gospel the same as you do. They need to be saved. I believe Jesus talks about this kind of stuff in the Beatitudes, the very beginning of the greatest sermon ever given. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. God's heart is near to the brokenhearted, is near to those who weep and mourn and wail, to those who are persecuted. A little bit later in Matthew, Jesus says, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. See, God wants mercy. If there's one thing that we all want, it's grace and mercy. We all want it. We all want to be accepted. We all want the forgiveness of God, but sometimes we find that hard to give. I don't know where you're at this morning. Paul and Barnabas have completed their first missionary journey. What kind of journey has God got you on? I mean, now you may not be called to Iconium and Lystra and Derbe and all these towns and modern day Turkey and Syria and these places. But the work has to go on where we're at. If you are in a place where you need to take that first step of faith and you're at the point where it's like, you know what, I've made a decision. Well, come and talk to us, because the next step or the first step in that faith journey is a step into baptism. If you need to rededicate yourself because you find yourself just kind of waxing and waning and you've just kind of been wishy-washy, time to rededicate yourself. Maybe you need to become a member of the church. Maybe you need to get a part of a Bible study or a small group. Maybe you need to get plugged in and serve somewhere. Whatever it is that you need, prayer partners up here, the altar will be open. Please, 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 do not leave this place if you do not know where your eternal destiny is. Do not leave this place if you've got something on your heart that needs to be left at the altar. That is what this time is for. Leave it here and don't ever pick it up again. Because our God is a God who works miracles, signs, wonders, and healing. And sometimes that's not physical, it's very much spiritual.